It's football and other F words. My name is Zach Lyons. You can follow me on X at FWordsPod. He's Mike Herndon. You can follow him on X at Mike Herndon NFL. You can also read all about why Derrick Henry sucks and he shouldn't be re-signed over at paulkarski.com. Mike's latest article is about how Derrick Henry is a dinosaur, a prehistoric relic of a bygone era for the Tennessee Titans, and he should be put in a museum where kids can come and pay and hear you as a grandpa come talk about the days that Derrick Henry was a 9K rusher, but not quite 10K. Over at secondinbox.com, where you can also subscribe, we write really great articles that aren't hit pieces on beloved Titans players like Mike. We have talk about Prince William, crowning him Prince William, technically, to play off King Henry that has now been beheaded by Mike.
Yeah,
We also have Film Friday articles coming out, draft content coming out. We'll be going to the Senior Bowl, me and Stoney, so there'll be all kinds of content with that. We're also sponsored by Bluegrass Beverages, who did suffer some storm damages, but they are in the process of getting reopened. So when they are fully functional and you can make your way out there, because the roads have been a mess in Hendersonville, particularly the road that they are on, head over to Bluegrass Beverages. At least go support them as they have been, going through it. All of Hendersonville has. So please, Bluegrass Beverages, Hendersonville, Tennessee, who for 2 years in a row now has won Main Street Media's Best Liquor Store in Middle Tennessee Award. Bluegrass Beverages, Hendersonville, Tennessee. Mike, what a game. And there's something about Sunday where I'm watching, all these teams that were kind of middle of the pack lose. And we see, the Texans lost, if I'm not mistaken. The Jaguars lost. I think the Colts lost as well. But I'm seeing all these teams lose, and not just them, but the other teams. And I'm thinking, Mike Vrabel's going to, on this flight to Miami, is going to tell everybody in that locker room, say, hey, we can make the playoffs. We are a playoff team. Let's go out here and fight for this win, and we are going to win, and we can win. We still have a chance to win the division. We have a chance to make the playoffs because all these teams lost, and the AFC still, right now, is still wide-ass open for the most part. And I just had that feeling on Sunday. And then I'm thinking, no. There's no Vrabel magic left. We talked about it all week. They're still going to lose by, 30 points and this and that. And look, we have been big believers in Mike Vrabel all year, just in the general sense that he should be able to keep his job in 2024 and beyond. And anybody who thinks otherwise has been just asinine. Now, we're okay with the trade, give us some first-round picks. We're okay with that. But these people who think they should be fired or replaced or this or that. But we didn't really believe that this roster was good enough for Vrabel to have a Vrabel game. And sure, some things went their way, some injuries, but Tyreek Hill still played a lot of the snaps. Jalen Waddle was still out there. And apparently Cedric Wilson was giving people fits as well. They were running running the ball at will. They had all this speed. But God dang it, if Mike Vrabel didn't pull out a classic Mike Vrabel game when literally no one expected it, except for maybe Blake Bedingfield, which I gave him props Monday night after the game because I always harp on the stuff that Blake Bedingfield writes, and I really did not agree with his take that Mike McDaniel would grow impatient. But Mike McDaniel grew impatient and at the worst possible time. And Blake Bedingfield was right. What people can go and listen to a football show on Monday to hear more of my exuberation, my energy following at that game. But as you're watching it, because we've both been a big proponent of, man, really want to get to that top 5 draft pick area. We really want to get in that top 6 draft pick. But I found myself saying as the game went on, at the beginning of the game, I was like, oh, this is going to be a rough game. But as the game went on, I found myself looking at Will Levis's performance and going, damn it. I really love what I'm seeing from Will Levis. He's really turned it on this second half. He looks the best. This is probably one of the best second halves that he has had, the Tennessee Titans have had on offense all season, maybe even dating back into last season. And I go, man, it sure is nice to know that you have a true answer. It still has some ways to go, but you have a true answer at quarterback. And really, I would give up a top 5 pick for that. Like, I would give up a top 5. Would I have liked to have lost by 1 point and still gotten the Will Levis? Sure. But wins do matter to the wins matter to if you're a competitor, and we know Will Levis is a competitor, wins matter. So, like, take us through the roller coaster of emotions that you probably went through in this game as a person that has given up entirely on caring about this team.
Well, I think you said at some point in there that the AFC South was still wide open. It is not still wide open for the Titans. They even if they go 4-0, provided that they go 4-0, which I think is doubtful, even coming off of this improbable win, they still only have a 15% chance of making the playoffs if they go 4-0 the rest of the way. So like this is not.
It's wide open. Don't listen.
It's
We
not
mention this
wide
every
open.
year.
This is
It
not
is wide
open
open because the Jaguars are hampered. The Texans are hampered. The teams in front, the AFC is not a good conference this year. Titans aren't really that hampered right now.
The best player is injured.
No, Will Levis is around. Will Levis is the best player on the field.
Besides the fact that the division is closed to the Titans, and this win is ultimately meaningless.
This division is not closed. Like, I'm just saying, we have seen crazier things happen, like the Jaguars last year. We have seen crazy stuff happen all the time.
The Jaguars still play the Panthers at home.
Listen, you gotta even if they beat the Panthers, even if they beat the Panthers, there's still a path for them to win the division. So let me say something. I just want to say it's the NFL. We should not deal in absolutes and say it is not wide open. But generally, the AFC is wide open. Generally, it is wide open. That was my overarching theme, is that there's going to be some crazy team that makes a push at the end of the year that gets in that was probably left for dead at some point.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't think it'll be the Titans. But either way, let's talk about the positive things from this game, which were, I mean, this game started and I was like, oh God, this, if you listen to the show last week, you know what my expectation levels were. Coming into this game, we both said like 45-10 or something like that. And I thought it was going to be a bloodbath, even with the Dolphins being banged up, on the offensive line. And, they had Javon Holland was out. They Jalen Phillips was out. They were missing some guys, right? Still didn't think it was going to matter. They were still the clearly more talented team. The Titans hadn't won a road game all year. I was convinced it was going to be a bloodbath, and then the Titans started horrifically, and it was like, okay, well, here we go. This is what it's going to be. The rest of the world is going to get to see what we get put through every week. And then the Titans just kind of like they had the good drive to go down and score a touchdown with Henry in the first half, and they just kind of were hanging around, and then by like halftime, they make the drive down to go, get the field goal before the end of the half. And I was like, they really kind of outplayed the Dolphins in that first half, all things considered. Obviously, like the fluky pick six where the guy was kind of blocked into the path of the screen, and he gets picked off in return for a touchdown. Setting that aside, I mean, like the Dolphins did nothing early in that game on offense. So at halftime, I was kind of like, they're going to kind of hang around and make this interesting. And then you get the back-to-back turnovers at the very start of the fourth quarter with the muff punt, which I do agree. Garrett's arm was grabbed. And as Mike Vrabel said, I don't give a fuck, get out of the way of the ball. But that should have been catch interference. Also Cedric Wilson did not get 2 feet inbound. So like the Dolphins caught some breaks in this game, and for the Titans to still come back and win after the fumble to Henry, which Henry should have fallen on and recovered on that pitch play, even if it was a bad toss by Levis. For them to not get any of those breaks to go their way and still come back and win that game, like to me, it shows one, Mike Vrabel still has this locker room. And anybody who doubts that is an idiot at this point. Like, this team still wants to play for Vrabel. They all say, like, Levis talks about how he's
All of them.
inspired to
All
play for
players want to play
Vrabel,
for
how he
Vrabel.
loves Vrabel. Like, everyone wants to play for Vrabel. They're all fired up. I don't give a shit about what these losers like Monty Rice and Jaleel Johnson tweet after they leave the team. Guess what? They're in their feelings because they got cut by an NFL team, and a bad NFL team at that. And they're just being emotional children and taking it out on the internet, right? And Jaleel Johnson comes back and deletes the tweets and gets a strip sack in this game, right? Like, these things are meaningless, and people need to stop reading so much into them when they happen. Much less trying to build this into some big case that like Vrabel's lost the team or anything like that.
Monty Rice, who still did not play for New Orleans Saints yet. He
Monty
got
Rice
picked up.
sucks.
He didn't even play special teams for him.
I don't know how anyone believes that Monty Rice is anything but a bad football player at this point. He got benched by Georgia. I mean, Jesus Christ. I don't understand why anyone gives a shit what these losers say when they get cut from the team. But anyways, the Titans are playing hard for Vrabel. They played hard for Vrabel last week. Now, that doesn't mean they're not making horrible mistakes, right? Like getting 2 punts blocked in a row, horrible mistakes. Throwing a pick six, horrible mistake. The punt return muff, horrible mistake. They are not playing perfect football, nor should anyone be expecting them to the rest of this season, because they're still playing guys that shouldn't be playing in the NFL right now. But they play hard. They fight. They don't give up. They had every reason to give up when they went down 27-13 on the road on Monday Night Football against the Dolphins, a team that nobody expected them to beat or even be anywhere close to. There's no reason for them to continue to fight this year because they're not going to the playoffs, no matter what Zach thinks. But here they are in the fourth quarter.
There's a chance that they could.
There's a chance. There's also like a chance that, there's a chance for a lot of things.
Yeah, that's factually correct.
But anyways, the Titans are continuing to fight for Vrabel. And to me, that tells you everything you need to know about Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel can inspire a team. And I think he came in with a great game plan, especially for the defense containing. They still had Tyreek Hill. Yes, he got hurt early in the game, but he still looked like he was moving around pretty good when he did play at times in the second half there. And like you said, they still had Jalen Waddle, Cedric Wilson, still a serviceable receiver. And they still had their, Raheem Mostert. They still had Devon Achane. They still have Tua. They've got all these guys out there. And I'm not interested in hearing any excuses about injuries or anything like that from a Dolphins team that is loaded with talent, playing it against a Titans team that has already suffered a ton of injuries and is playing guys who would be backups on almost every other roster in the NFL. So Vrabel gets an A+ 5-star grade for this game, coming out with the win. It is exactly why he should be the coach next year. We've talked about it all season. We have never backed off our support of Mike Vrabel one bit on this show. So I think we will be proven right at the end of time here. Whenever Vrabel hangs it up as Titans head coach, and I think it's going to be many, many years down the road for that to happen. I think we will be proven right in that the Titans should not and will not get rid of Mike Vrabel at any point here. I think he's their coach until he doesn't want to be their coach anymore. I honestly feel that way. Even
it's like we said last week, it's a good loss because you saw the fight, and last year or last week, Braden said that but they lost, so that it's more often than not they're probably not going to want to fight again. It's a real demoralizing loss, and I said it may be on the surface, but I think when you go into the locker room, Mike Vrabel is going to be able to get them still together, because it's better to go into war, into battle with people that are going to give it their all, than what we have seen sometimes with this team where it feels like there are players that do give up. And these players didn't give up. And it's offense, defense, it did not matter. These players were not going to give up on this game. and they were able to take one, and they're going to be facing a Texans team that is really, really banged up coming in. You're going to be wearing the Oilers uniforms. You're going to be at home. I mean, it's all lining up that's at least going to be maybe a couple weeks ago, I was a little worried that they were going to lose an Oilers uniform. But this team that we've seen play for the last 2 weeks is trending in the right direction
Yeah.
to where they're going to ruin some teams' Sunday. I mean, like
Yeah.
their playoff chances. Like at some point, the Texans or the Jaguars or something are going to come down to a game that they need to get in, and they're going to look back at that game down the stretch where the Tennessee Titans beat them, and they'll be like, that was the game that cost us. Like,
I,
especially
I
in a
think
tight division race like it is.
I think they're beating Houston this week. I think they're going to beat Houston, and I'm not sure it'll be that close, to be honest with you. Houston's very banged up, and coming in against a team that, look, they do care, and they're going to be wearing the Oilers jerseys. I know people will say that shouldn't matter. I think guys do get a little bit extra juiced when you can wear like a cool uniform or whatever, something like that. I think the fans will be going nuts off of this last performance, as nuts as Titans fans can go with 5-8 season. But I think it's going to be a team that is coming in with good vibes against a team that is going to be very banged up and licking their wounds a little bit after giving up 30 points to the Jets in the second half last week. So I think the Titans are going to win this game. Whether they'll beat Seattle and then beat the Houston Texans again in Houston and beat the Jaguars, I don't know that they're going to run the table or anything, but I think they'll beat Houston this week. I do. And look, at this point, draft pick be damned. I think we worry about the draft pick at the end of the season, and you'll see what it is. Like, and it may be top 5.
This
It
is
may
why,
be
by the
top
way,
10.
tanking
It
was
may
never
be,
going to work. This
yeah,
team, Mike Vrabel cannot in his DNA tank. And this
I agree.
team, and now that you see Will Levis is not going to be in his
No,
DNA to tank.
no,
It doesn't
he
mean that they
gives a
can't
shit.
lose,
He gives a
but
lot of
they're
shits.
not tanking. And I always thought the notion of tanking was ridiculous anyway. I mean, you can root for losses. Just say you're rooting for losses. Don't say, "Oh,
Yeah,
the tank's on," or "We're tanking," or "They're clearly tanking," because that's not the same thing.
right.
Tanking has a different meaning.
Yeah,
It's quit watering down tanking to mean, oh, well, the Titans are just going to lose, because that's not the same thing.
yeah.
They were never going to tank. There was never a plan to tank. They just haven't been good enough to win. But with the right quarterback, maybe they are kind of good enough to win, because they really are leaning on the quarterback, regardless of what some losers on Twitter want to say or keep saying about how Mike Vrabel sure wants to run 40 times a game and blah, 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 blah. Like, you're just ignoring everything that is happening at this point just because you hate Mike Vrabel and you want an offensive head coach. That, to me, is some of the biggest where we're at right now with some analysts, some media members, some fan analysts, some fans, is that they just want an offensive head coach. And so they're going to disparage Mike Vrabel and continue old and tired narratives that have nothing to do with how they have constructed, built, and game planned with this team. Are they still going to run the ball? Why, yes, they're still going to run the ball. Because guess what? A lot of teams still run the ball. That's just what it is. But every move that they have made is to try and make the passing offense better than what it has been. And they want to rely a little bit more on the passing offense, because everybody's like, well, that's just Mike Vrabel doesn't really care. And I'm like, here's the thing about, he talks about passer rating. Now, it does not mean you have to pass a lot or anything to have a high pass rating, but you have to pass well. And they want to pass well. And you don't have to figure out Brian Spivey. I just want to figure out how to get rid of Dillard in the offseason. You just cut him. Like, there's nothing preventing them from cutting him. He will be cut, whether that's a post-June 1st designation or this year or right up front designation. Doesn't matter. He ain't going to be on your team. So you don't even have to worry about it.
And even if they
Problem
cut him
solved.
regular, just a standard, see
Yeah.
you bye at the end of the season, they'll save $3 million against the cap next year. So
Yeah.
it's
You're good.
Put
that away. Lock it up. But you don't even have to worry about Andre Dillard being on this team next year.
He will not be here. Yeah, guarantee. Like, go ahead and chisel it in stone. Titans release Andre Dillard for whatever the first day that they're allowed to release players after the season is.
But let's say this, and I think someone had, I don't know the Twitter user's handle, or I don't know what it was responding to off the top of my head anymore, and I can't find it. But there was something that's like someone said that if you showed this game, let's say this was a college playoff game, like if you showed that Will Levis performance to someone last year, and you said, "Hey, this guy can go on your team and do this exact same thing in the NFL," would you trade? Would you trade up for him? And probably a lot of fans would probably say yes.
Oh yeah.
And you got him in the second round. But I think a lot what I'm saying is that like if that guy's your franchise quarterback, I think a lot of people would say I'm going to trade for my franchise quarterback. Right? I mean, we've always talked about go get your guy and how
Yeah.
that's what I think a lot of fans would say, regardless of college affiliation, because I know everybody wants him to, Kentucky fans and all that kind of stuff and UT fans. But I'm just saying, if you showed someone that guy and said, you can have that guy by sacrificing a few spots in the draft, I think 9 times out of 10, last year, people would have said, yes, that's okay. I'll win some games if I can get that guy.
Yeah.
And I look at it and I go, okay, so they're at 9th. And while I don't really know where they're going to land or really care, not everybody ahead of you, wherever you land, is going to draft offensive players. There's going to be defensive players in the year. There's going to be surprises. There's going to be people that move up the boards. We see it every year that go a little bit higher than what people think. So I'm looking at like, okay, if you're at pick 9, okay, well, that's still probably Rome Odunze. That's still probably Keon Coleman, Brock Bowers, and J.C. Lethium territory, right? Like,
I think
even if you get to
I think
11 or
it's
12, you're still looking at those kinds of guys right there. And
yeah.
my philosophy has always been, if you're in the top 5, grab one of the 3 players: Marvin Harrison Jr., Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu.
Yeah.
But if you fall out there, it's just grab players that help your quarterback that you could build around.
And for what it's worth, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is a lock to go in the top 5. Like there's just no way that that's not happening. But and I think Olu Fashanu probably is as well. I don't think he'll go past like 6 or 7 most likely. But Joe Alt, a lot of people are mourning Joe Alt as like that the last night's or Monday night's win, it was the end of the potential of them getting him. For one, if they lose out, which like I said, I don't think they're going to lose out, but even if they do, you would still end up with a top 5 pick almost certainly. And 2, Joel isn't even the second ranked tackle on multiple big boards. So like Mel Kiper, I think, has him 3rd or 4th among tackles. Dane Brugler has him 3rd or 4th as well.
They're including J.C. Latham as a right tackle, though, right? So that
Right,
isn't
right,
that
right.
like a kind of a key differentiation when you're going, because we say, remember, it's horizontal and vertical. So
Yeah,
even if like J.C. Latham is the best right tackle, you probably still have Olu and Alt, depending on your team needs, as the top 2 guys if you're a team, because left tackle is so much more worth than right tackle, depending on the team, right?
I don't know that left tackle and right tackle are that far apart to me. Like to me, I think you have to have a good, because like Penei Sewell, for example. Penei Sewell's a right tackle, and he was drafted what, number 6 overall, number
I think
7,
so.
somewhere in that range. The Lions certainly aren't regretting that pick. Like he is fantastic, and he is the anchor of one of the best offensive lines in football. Lane Johnson, same thing. He was number 4 overall pick, I think. He has been the anchor of one of the best offensive lines in football in Philly for a long time now. I think if you have an elite left or right tackle, that's a value. That's a huge value player. Because if J.C. Latham is a better player than Joe Alt, and I'm saying, and I'm not saying he is, but if you say that, all right, I can have a better player, but he plays right tackle versus left tackle, I'm taking him. I'm taking the better guy. Like I'm taking the right tackle, and I'll figure out the left side. I just don't think there's that big of a difference. I think you have to be solid at your tackle spots. If you had to choose, you would choose left, but I don't think it's a big gap. And to me, because Darnell Wright was drafted 10th last year, and he's a pure
Yeah.
right tackle. And he went over Broderick Jones. Was there another tackle in that class? Paris Johnson Jr. went before
Yeah, Anton
Wright.
Harrison, DeJuan Jones. DeJuan Jones fell a lot, and he
Yeah, and
was
he was like
considered a first
4th
round
rounder.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but anyways, Darnell Wright over what's his name for the Steelers? Broderick
Roderick
Jones.
Jones.
That's another. That's like an example, I think, of like the league saying that they just want to get the best tackle, not necessarily the left side over the right side. So to me, if Fuaga or if JC Latham, or there's some other guys that I think the tackle from Washington, some people like a lot. Uh, if some of those guys end up over alt, it wouldn't be a shocker. And look, I mean, even as big boards come into consensuses, we always get shockers, right? Like we always get like, oh my god, I can't believe Jackson Smith and Jigba fell to 22 or whatever it was this past year. There's always
So you're
shockers that
kind
will
of
make the
seeing why
money.
he kind of did, when you think about it. Like, how many
He's
times have
been
we
pretty
seen the
good.
consistent? I mean, how many times now have we seen the consistent number one wide receiver end up his rookie year not being the best wide receiver in the class? Not saying that's going to happen with Marvin Harrison
Yeah,
Jr., but you have to allow for the possibility that Marvin Harrison Jr. may not live up to the hype if he ends up at, Washington or New England or somewhere like that, just spitballing a couple of these places. He may not end up
Arizona.
being the
Yeah,
best. You never know. Like, I'm just saying that, it's maybe if you fall to there and you get Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze, you have and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his last name right, but
that's right.
you
Yeah,
have maybe the best wide receiver in the draft class
yeah.
because you never
It
know.
wouldn't.
It's a
It wouldn't be
crapshoot
a
of how the
shock at
wide
all.
receivers turn out. Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a shock at all for me if Neighbors or Dunze prove to be better than Harrison at the next level, because they're all awesome. Like they are awesome wide receiver prospects. They're all better than any of the guys from last year's class. And y'all know how big I was on JSN last season. I think all three of those guys are head and shoulders better than JSN or any wide receiver in last year's class. I think they're all worthy of top 10 picks, and they probably aren't all going to go in the top 10. Like odds are other guys are going to work their way in there, other positions. Somebody's going to need to get a Jared Verse or a Latu or, whoever you think the best cornerback is, Cooper DeJean or whoever you have as your top guys. There's going to be some teams that probably reach for need, even though you shouldn't. But that's going to get sprinkled in there. It's not going to be that like all the players that you want are automatically taken in that order at the very top of the draft, and your team's going to get screwed. So I think you
Nobody
got
really thought Skoronski was going to fall as far as he did.
or think about what was Justin Jefferson's draft class.
Oh, like,
He was like the fifth
I
wide receiver that went.
yeah.
Because it was
And
Devontae
he's by far the
Smith.
best wide receiver. He was like
Yeah,
in the I think
easily.
he was 18th or 19th, or maybe he
Right.
was like 21st or
20.
22nd or something.
He was in the 20s because he went one pick after Jalen Rager.
Okay,
Um,
Jalen Rager I thought was 18, but maybe I'm mistaken.
no, yeah, Rager. I think Rager was 21 and Jefferson was
Okay.
22 or something like that. But yeah, I mean, like the draft is an imperfect process. We all know. Like, sure, it is better to have a higher pick than it is to have a lower pick. Not going to debate that, no doubt about it. Like, you're more likely to get a blue chipper higher up in the draft you go. But it's not like it's this thing where, like, well, if only they hadn't won that Dolphins game back in 2023, this franchise would be
But
totally
also,
different.
isn't it nice to know that you have a quarterback that's going to actually win you games?
Yeah,
Like, I don't know, man. Like, sometimes we take that for granted in
yeah,
talking about Ryan Tannehill's that, he won games, but mainly it felt like more like a team effort. Like, it wasn't really because of Ryan Tannehill. It was like he was the catalyst, and then everybody played a little bit better. Like, you point at this, and you could say it's Will Levis and his connection that he has built with Tyjae Spears and DeAndre Hopkins that is, like, changing the outlook of this team. And I get it. Everybody wants a really great draft choice, and you can get draft picks all throughout the draft. You can get draft picks that are better in the second and third than you can in the first. I mean, it happens all the time. It's a crapshoot.
yeah. Here,
But
by the way, that the 2020
yeah,
draft class, just
okay, yeah,
to
go ahead.
clarify on the wide receivers, it went Henry Ruggs was the first wide receiver off the board at 12. Then you go Jerry Judy at 15, and then you go CD Lamb at 17, Jalen Rager at 21, Justin Jefferson at 22, and Brandon Ayuk at 25. So Ruggs obviously total bust for reasons off the field, but
Yeah,
still,
he wasn't
Judy
really trending well either way.
Judy has been a total bust.
Yeah.
What
Oh,
is
don't tell Titans fans that every time Judy comes up as a conversation, they got to trade for him.
Yeah, just dying to give up first round picks for Jerry Jeudy, who
Yeah.
still has done nothing. But and then you get CeeDee Lamb, obvious hit, Rager, horrible bust, Jefferson, total hit, and then Ayuk, who's been a major hit as well. So like the three best wide receivers out of those six that got drafted in the first round this year were picks, what, 3, 5, and 6 out of that order. So like there's no telling which we think we know exactly who's the best coming out of the draft. We rarely are accurate on that. Like just as a draft community, it's just rarely that it plays out that way.
Yeah, it's just really interesting. And speaking of drafts and busts and wide receivers, um, I'm really mad at James Foster of No Flag Films, A to Z Film Room. He just had to post something about Traylon Burks because now everybody's either coming out and defending Traylon Burks or coming out and saying the coaching staff is dumb or just writing articles about what happened to Traylon Burks, even though they really don't know what happened to Traylon Burks. Um, I just hate talking. I just hate all the Traylon Burks discourse we're probably going to have over the next few days because here at the end of the day, Traylon Burks' shortcomings are nobody's fault but his own. Like, and then some of the listen, injuries aside, like if you take injuries out of it, he's had major drop issues. He's had major concerns, conditioning. He hasn't really shown up. They have to try to get him open by using end arounds because he can't get open elsewhere. And then when he has a drop in the bucket, it's like he wanted to drop it. Like that pass in at Will that Will Levis and connected with him on, and he just drops it. Like to me, that's just like he just doesn't want to catch the football anymore. And at this point, we've said it all along. Traylon Burks has to prove it, but he does not deserve anybody's benefit of the doubt. He does not deserve at this point for you to go on the air or to go on X and say the coaching staff has to do something different. They're totally to blame. This is the same coaching staff with the same position coach that developed A.J. Brown. I think they know what they're doing developing wide receivers. And right now, maybe you could put some blame on Will Levis because he's not looking Traylon Burks' way. But if I was a quarterback on this team, I wouldn't look at Traylon Burks' way because he hasn't rewarded you to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole Burks thing. Look, Vrabel said today, there is some value in some of the things that he is doing for them, which is basically running clear outs and forcing teams to respect his ability to get over the top, which I think is true to some degree. Like that does have value what he's doing. But I also don't think like this isn't what you wanted when you took him with the number 16 overall pick. Certainly was a guy that could run clear outs for you because guess what? Khalif Raymond could run clear outs for you.
Listen, Mike Vrabel said
Um,
those aren't clear outs, and so you guys can
yeah.
shove that term up your ass. I'm not
Well, I
here
mean,
to listen to that fucking term anymore.
he's right in that, like, yes, that is a read, like, because what did they're running basically like some version of Yankee, which we've talked about on the show lots of times before, in that it's a big play action shot concept with a vertical post route that Traylon Burks is running, and then an intermediate crossing route that Hopkins is running. And sometimes they bend it outside, sometimes they bend it inside, sometimes they fake the crosser and then peel it back to the other side. Like they run a lot of variations of that, but at the end of the day, it's all the same concept that they're running, and it's basically they are hoping to get you in a single high safety look, and then they are running two guys over the middle of the field, and you're either going to have to double with your single high safety the post and stay on the top of the post, or you bring your safety down and you try to cut the crosser because the crosser's running away from leverage of your corner at that point. So the idea is that Levis simply looks at where the safety goes and throws it to the other guy, right? Like, so it is true. Like Burks, if the safety starts cheating down on Hopkins to try to take that away, Levis can cut it loose and hit Burks. But that's also not going to be target on that play 9 times out of 10 because most teams are going to coach their safety to stay over the top of the the vertical route, not try to jump down and cut the crosser unless you just have some badass corner that you're just not afraid of running with your post route one-on-one deep for some reason, which most teams don't have. And even if they do, a lot of coaches don't really want to coach that anyways. So he's right. Like he's right, and I get what he's saying, but they're using him in the route that's not going to be targeted very often. And there's a reason that they're doing that because Hopkins is a better receiver than him. And I thought heading into the year that the Titans needed Burks to be the number one guy for this offense to really like reach its full potential, and that's just not even come remotely close to happening. He's not even really the number two guy. Like NWI has outplayed him this year, even when they've both been on the field and healthy. So yeah, I just think it's a massive disappointment. And I mean, Burks, I don't have anything against him personally. I think he has worked hard to try to get like into better shape. I think he's worked hard to try to like fix some of his shortcomings. And injuries have set him back without a doubt. So I feel for him in that regard. But I don't have a lot of hope that the light's going to suddenly come on and he's going to be a wide receiver one at any point in his NFL career at this point. I think he is just kind of a guy.
But I do kind of feel good that DeAndre Hopkins and Will Levis seem to really, really vibe. Like
Yeah, they like each other.
they have a connection. Will Levis is like looking his way, force feeding the ball as much as possible, which is like a wide receiver one's dream is to be just fed the ball constantly. And I kind of feel like I think there's a 98% chance that DeAndre Hopkins is going to play out year 2 of the contract, or maybe they work out some kind of multi-year extension or whatever. Like, I feel like DeAndre Hopkins is going to be here next year, and I think that's the most important player to bring back that is a technically not a pending free agent, but what we deemed was a 1-year contract for DeAndre Hopkins needs to be a 2-year in its fullest. Like they need to let the contract play out because we really thought that okay, well maybe they'll cut him after after this year if he doesn't really do anything. And now he's shown that he still has it, and we had both been on the train even when he was a free agent, saying that he does still have it. That he's likely going to give you really great production and great numbers. And I think that if you're asking me to choose between DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry, I'm choosing DeAndre Hopkins. If you're asking me to choose between DeAndre Hopkins and Danico Autry, I'm choosing DeAndre Hopkins. Like those kinds of decisions and it's not the decision they have to make. I'm just saying that DeAndre Hopkins is probably one of the more important pieces to bring back or to keep on the team in 2024.
Oh, 100%. I mean, he's been every bit like as advertised, right? Like over the what he was in Arizona. I mean, he's been just as good here and if not better. I mean, some of these catches he makes are like absolutely incredible. He's on pace for I think it's 1175 yards thereabouts, which would be the best wide receiver season this franchise has seen since 2004. Which is pretty incredible considering the fact that, Will Levis is a rookie quarterback that got thrown in there, and you had Ryan Tannehill for the first 6 games, and the team's just not that good generally. I mean, he has been hugely productive. He's been hugely helpful, and yeah, I mean, he's having Twitter back and forth with Des Bryant talking about how Will Levis is that guy, and that he knew he knew kind of right away that Levis was the real deal. It turns out like Colts fans freaking out and talking about how Levis and Hopkins hate each other because they yelled at each other on the sidelines in that game last week. Don't know shit. Those guys clearly are very much fans of each other. And I think Hopkins buying in to Levis helps the team not only from the standpoint of like, it's great that he has a connection with his number one receiver. But also Hopkins buying into Levis is like, Hopkins is one of those guys that in the locker room, no matter how long he's been there, other guys are going to look to and see, all right, are you, how do you feel about it? Because you're the receiver, you're the guy that's really most interactive with Levis. You know, if he's in on Levis, I feel like the whole locker room's in on Levis, and how could they not be at this point? And like I think the flexing on the sidelines and screaming and losing his shit after that touchdown. I love that shit. Like I was fired up to see it. I think it's the exact opposite of Marcus Mariota, who we complained about for years, just being like kind of a wet bag from a
Well, we did.
emotional
Not
standpoint.
fans. Oh
Well,
man,
we
fans
did.
love.
No, yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Mariota
Not the
got up
royal
and
we.
Mariota got up and flexed one time against the Jaguars in 5 years as a quarterback here, and that was enough fire for some people. But no, Levis is a fiery guy. He's obviously a fucking psycho competitor, which I think is great. That's like one of those traits that like, and I'm not comparing him to these guys, so like just stop before I even
But
say
he's
this.
also like humble about it, by the way. I mean,
Yeah,
like, there's a difference between, and I think of a lot of people like having fire, having passion in the moment, and then, after a bad game, being able to say, oh, I had a bad game or I got something
yeah,
wrong. That's a little bit, there's some people that may have QX'd your post that doesn't seem to have the emotional IQ to understand that there is a difference between being in the moment and being an asshole on X about everything. Just one thing.
exactly. And yeah, he seems like his own harshest critic in a lot of times because he's talked about how after games it's like, yeah, that was the worst game I've played. I need to be better, all that stuff. He says all the right things. It seems like he carries himself in a really positive way for the locker room. But to me, like, you think about Tom Brady, you think about Michael Jordan, like two of the best of to ever do it in any sports capacity. What do they have in common most is that they are psycho competitors. Like they have like that competitive sickness about them. And I'm not saying Levis will be on their level at any point, but I think the fact that he is wired that way gives him a chance to be like really good at the NFL level. And I think that mixed with like his clear physical gifts is a great combination of traits. I mean, Panthers fans have to be kind of sick that it looks like they traded up for what maybe is the third or fourth best quarterback in last year's class. I mean, it's too early to like say that for certain, obviously, but Levis has shown everything you could possibly want from a franchise quarterback. He showed it all in this game, by the way. Like there was the
Yeah.
plays where he showed the escapability in the pocket where he's shrugging off of would be sacks and going and making a play. The touchdown throw to DeAndre Hopkins was a phenomenal play on his part because like he reads out the play. Like they were trying to get a rub route on the left side for Tajay Spears on that play. It didn't materialize at all. I don't know if Chris Moore actually, by the way, I don't know if he ran to the wrong guy to try to rub or what, but it looked like he just kind of ran and stood by the guy that was covering him instead of running and trying to like get get the rub on Tajay Spears' linebacker that was coming out to cover him in the flat. But anyways, he moves off of that because it's not open. And he steps up in the pocket. He kind of threatens with his legs and then uses that to draw out the linebackers and tosses it back to Hopkins, who uncovers because of Will Levis's pocket movement. The fact that he moved in the pocket and moved the defense with him is why DeAndre Hopkins was able to be open and why that ended up being an easy touchdown. That kind of stuff is something that the Titans haven't had in forever as far as being able to play make outside of structure, that kind of thing. And Levis flashed that in this game. He flashed the strength in the pocket. He flashed the arm. He flashed the touch. He flashed the running ability, the ability to line up and fold up Jalen Ramsey like an accordion. I mean, it was the whole package on display, and I think you would be crazy not to be excited about Will Levis if you're a Titans fan right now. Like, yes, there's still mistakes, there's still consistency stuff, but this dude has the goods if he can get consistency around him, get better talent around him, and put it all together. And I think he can because of the competitive wiring.
Yeah, Ryan Tannehill's not leading down the offense, and I like Ryan Tannehill, but
Yeah.
Ryan Tannehill's not leading that offense in with 14 points, down 14 points. He's not doing that.
No.
We've seen him not do that, actually. So, we know that he cannot do it. Oh, we lost Mike. Well, I don't know what happened to Mike. I think he was, clicking something, then he left. So we'll have to bring him in. Because I guess he knew that I was gonna be asking. I said that I guess you knew that I was gonna be asking about Derrick Henry, and so I guess you just wanted to exit out of the show. But you're back. Derrick Henry, 2 yards per carry. You wrote about it. We've kind of talked about it, in our messages. We kind of talked about it. I've kind of talked about it at secondinbox.com too. And this will tie into some of the outrageously bad takes that I've seen heading into the game and that are still floating around after the game. But I've seen a lot of people want to bring back Derrick Henry. To me, it's just like, if you're gonna bring him back on the real cheap. I don't know
Yeah.
if Derrick come back on the real cheap, but quite frankly, I just don't give a shit if he does or not. You
Yeah.
should have your limit should be like $5 million, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of where I'm at. Your limit for spending on Derrick Henry should be $5 million. If it's 6 or if it's 7, I don't really care. But it does not need to be like 10 or 11. Okay.
Right.
So let's just cut that off right there. Single digits for Derrick Henry. Now, if he chooses not to take it and he chooses to test the market, I don't blame him. I don't blame any player doing that. He ain't going to get much better. He's not getting the deal. He's not going to get the deal that he wants because he's a 2-down running back that is clearly on the wrong side of the age curve for running backs. And he is not Adrian Peterson, in other words. Like, there is no revitalization of Derrick Henry coming down the path because he's already a year removed from injury. So he should, if injury was the excuse, that's already, that's gone. And you can show all the volume stats and all that kind of stuff. The running back market's flooded, this and that. But Tyjae Spears is clearly the better person to have on the field, and you can play him all 3 downs. It's why he plays in the 2-minute drills. No matter the half, he plays those because he doesn't ever have to come off the field. And Derrick Henry, yeah, he can catch the ball, and he made a great catch. He laid his body out for it, but those plays are few and far between. And I like to remind everybody, I love Derrick Henry, and I've loved Derrick Henry for a very, very long time, dating back to Alabama as an Alabama fan. So this is not like some unnecessary Derrick Henry hate. This is just a realistic view of what is happening. He cannot he cannot be good despite the offensive line anymore. He used to be able to do that. Even with the offensive line not blocking, he used to be able to do stuff. But this team has clearly, you got all the trade rumors that everything that happened around the combine, that happened all offseason, that happened at the trade deadline. This team clearly knows that Derrick Henry his future with the team is finite. His value to the team is finite. Does not mean they hate Derrick Henry. Does not mean that they don't appreciate everything that he's done, or we don't appreciate everything that he's done either. It's just being realistic about a real problem in the NFL, and that's the age of running backs and the production and value of running backs.
Yeah.
People who think that Derrick Henry, to me, I look at everything that happened this offseason, and I wouldn't have really put up much of a fight if it was the 22 Tennessee Titans. Like, we're heading into 2022. I wouldn't really put up much of a fight, but we know that San Francisco, Baltimore, Detroit, they all run the ball at higher rates than the Tennessee Titans. There are some of the Philadelphia, throw them in there as well. They're some of the highest scoring teams. They're running more efficiently, obviously, would be the biggest key difference. They have better offensive lines, they have better pass catching weapons. Yes, I agree. But they're not. But the Tennessee Titans are not running Derrick Henry for the sake of running Derrick Henry, right? I mean, we've seen that Derrick Henry is about to finish with his lowest total, more than likely, of carries since he became a full-time starter, and I guess that would be 2018. We've seen that the Tennessee Titans are running at a lower rate than they did under Art Smith right now, and they're passing at a higher rate than some of Art Smith's years as well. They went and got a pass blocking offensive line that is known by their metrics as a pass blocking offensive line. It turns out that some of those players were not, but they got players that were athletic to get out in space and to be able to try to block people, and they were pass blocking offensive linemen. They went and got DeAndre Hopkins. They kept Traylon Burks, Chigakonkwu, hoping that they were going to promote and go better or get higher. They got Tajay Spears drafted because of everything that he can do. They went and got another athletic tight end in Josh Wiley. This team wants to pass. The offensive coordinator that they got is known for a passing offense. He's not known. Name me the big time running backs that Tim Kelly and Houston have had over the years. I mean, were everything they did, interviewing Eric Bieniemy and Matt Nagy, who are passing at the number 1 and number 7 highest rate at their offenses. Everything that they did was to build around or build a NFL worthy passing game. And these people who think that this is still a team that wants to run the ball 40 times, they only want to run the ball that much if they are really far ahead and they just want to chew up some clock. Like, that's all it is. It's all game plan and the game flow and all that kind of stuff. And sure, maybe he doesn't want to throw 50 times a game, but he comes from Tom Brady. Like, he has seen a quarterback grow, a quarterback develop without a fantastic running game and win Super Bowls. So this idea that he's some prehistoric person because I think it's just mainly his demeanor and his gruffness and, his coach speak. But everything that you see with Rand Carthon and him did this offseason is telling you in flashing lights, we want to be able to pass the ball better, more efficiently, and a little bit more than what we have in the past.
100%. And I mean, to your point about him being a Patriots, obviously, disciple, and that being kind of his formative NFL experience, what were the Patriots when Vrabel got there? He arrived in New England the same year that Brady took over and they won that first Super Bowl. That first year, the Patriots were not opening it up and throwing the ball 40 times a game. Tom Brady was a game manager. He was not the reason that they won that Super Bowl. They won that Super Bowl because they were awesome on defense and they could run the ball really well with Antoine Smith and Kevin Falk and those guys. So that was a running and defense-based team because they were playing a young quarterback who was not ready to take over. They didn't have like elite wide receivers. They were playing like I think Deion Branch was probably their best wide receiver at that time, who was a good player, but not an elite type receiver by any means. And then by the time Vrabel left in 2008, he had just come off the 2007 year where the Patriots broke like every offensive record known to man with Randy Moss and Wes Welker and Tom Brady throwing the ball 40 times a game. And he saw that whole evolution because it was a gradual process. It wasn't like, all right, well, Brady's the guy now. Now we're going to fling it around the yard. They won the game. They consistently evolved how they won football games throughout Belichick's tenure there. It was not just one formula. It wasn't just all this, like, we're going to spread and pass the ball all over the field, which is what they're now known for and remembered for because that was like the bigger chunk. But the very first years of Brady were not like that at all. And honestly, a lot of you guys, I forget like how like old I am sometimes. A lot of you guys may not even remember what early year Brady or not may not even been alive for early year Brady, frankly. That was a very different style Patriots team, and they won the best way
he
that
was
they
totally
could with that roster
and thought of as a game manager,
for
as
sure.
a deep dunk specialist,
Yeah.
as a game manager. Like it's because today, I guess the big topic is, I guess Cam Newton called a bunch of quarterbacks like Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, and a few others game managers. And today's been whether that's a negative connotation or not. And I'm like, well, to me, it's just like it's not necessarily a bad thing that people are game managers, but also the greatest of all time started out as a game manager.
Yeah.
That's what he was, because everybody tried their best to try to say that Derrick Henry or that Tom Brady is not good and they're winning despite of him. And he turned it into the reason that they were winning. Like you said, it was a gradual decline. It just makes me, it's like people don't understand Mike Vrabel has always been a coach that plays to the strength of his team.
Yes.
Bill Belichick has always been a coach that plays to the strength of his team. And right now, you can argue that I think they do think that Will Levis is a growing strength by everything that he says, even though they hate each other and, all this kind of stuff, which we'll get to later. Even though they hate each other, they still realize that Will Levis is a strength of this team and he's the future of this team going forward. And you can tell by how much they trusted him to run the offense in the second half and the plays that they called to get him going and moving down the field, even after he threw an interception, a really, really bad pick six, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a really bad pick six. So even after he threw that, that would have been what people perceive Vrabel to be. That would have been the moment you would have saw, well, we're going to have to reel back and we can't rely on Will Levis. That's what most coaches do, right? They see that play and they're like, well, we'll rein it in, calm him down with some run plays. We'll calm him down and, let's just hope to get out of here without him making any more mistakes. That's not the case. So that's not the Mike Vrabel that we perceive and all that kind of stuff. So to me, it's like, people think there are legitimately, I don't know who all is hearing this within the sound of my voice. I know we reach thousands of people. So I want you to know that some of your most trusted fans, analysts, do not think that Mike Vrabel and Tim Kelly, if they had the offensive roster for the Miami Dolphins, they do not think that Mike Vrabel would serve or would put out a top 10 offense in the NFL. Even though he's had top 10 offenses in the NFL.
Yeah, twice.
Multiple times.
With Ryan Tannehill at quarterback.
Yeah. They do not think that if this team had all the speed, all the players, offensive line, the weapons, the quarterback, you swap them all 11 or 13 out entirely with the Tennessee Titans, that the Tennessee Titans would have a top 10 scoring offense. That is insane. That is an insane statement to make. Like, that is such a mind-boggling, mind-numbingly stupid statement. And I'm just floored. There are people that write about this team, that talk about this team, that are on the radio, that are on TV, that are on podcasts, in articles, that hate Mike Vrabel and Tim Kelly that bad that they're just going to be ignorant about it. Like, make ignorant statements like that. And that just drives me nuts.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff is completely asinine because there is no argument to be made that is based on any sort of reality that says that Mike Vrabel cannot be a coach of a top 10 offense because he's done it twice before with offenses that, by the way, weren't like uber talented. I mean, yeah, they had A.J. Brown, they had Derrick Henry. Those were blue chip pieces at that time. Even Taylor Lewan, I would say, was a blue chip piece at that time. When he was healthy, by the way. But it's not like this was a loaded offense that they took to, the 4th and 10th ranked offenses in the league during their time here. So that is crazy. But getting back to the Derrick Henry thing a little bit, I don't think that Vrabel is sold that he always wants to be a running team like that, like we just talked about. I think he's been playing to the strength of his team, which it has been Derrick Henry in his prime as the best running back in the league, which he was. I don't think he is any longer the best running back in the league, which is natural for a 30-year-old guy with a ton of carries under his belt over the past 5 or 6 years. That is to be expected. If he was still the best running back in the league, it would be insane. And before we get into but his offensive line, his offensive line is ranked 16th in the league in run blocking per PFF's team run blocking grades.
And it's right there. It's same for, let me just say the same for ESPN's pass block or run block win rate. They're, I think, 14th, 15th, or 16th in that.
Right around the middle of the pack. Run blocking and pass blocking don't always go together. Sometimes they do, because sometimes an offensive line is just really good at everything. But there are offensive lines that are terrible at one thing and actually pretty good at the other thing. Like Dennis Daly last year was a terrible pass blocker, but he was actually a pretty good run blocker. So Aaron Brewer, same thing. So this idea that a guy is either good or bad, binary, and is good or bad at both, has to be either terrible and so he's bad at everything, or he's good so he's good at everything. That's just not the reality of how the NFL works. So I don't think this is a terrible run blocking offensive line. Every metric
I
out
mean,
there is
remember
they're
kind of how
okay.
like everybody thought the offensive line and the playbook sucked when Marcus was in, and then they replaced him with Ryan Tannehill. Well, you're
Yeah,
actually seeing that in a game by game basis between Tajay Spears and Derrick Henry. Like,
yeah,
I guess maybe this offensive line is just hates Derrick Henry, because that's what I guess people think, and they just love Tajay Spears. Like,
yeah. It's
Tajay Spears is clearly functioning at a higher level, much higher level, behind the same offensive line.
Yeah,
Just is what it is.
he's rushing for almost a yard per carry more. And by the way, that's not just like well, he gets third down draws and gets cheap yards that way. If you isolate it to first and second down runs only, he's even more clear of Derrick Henry, honestly, at that point, because I think he's over 5 yards per carry if you look at just his first and second down runs. And if you look at his missed tackles forced, he's forcing missed tackles at a rate 40% higher than Derrick Henry on a per touch basis. So there is no metric out there that says Derrick Henry is a better running back than Tajay Spears. And your eye test, if you're being honest with yourself,
Except for
will tell
volume
you the
stat.
same thing. Right, exactly. Volume, which means nothing at the end of the day. I mean, let's talk about what it takes to be a good running team, because it's not like if the Titans don't have Derrick Henry next year, their rushing attack falls apart and they won't be good. Because listen to the top 5, let's say, rushing teams based on EPA per play for just running plays. The Ravens, who's their running back? I mean,
Gus
I don't even
Edwards
know.
and
It's Gus
is Keaton
Edwards and
Mitchell
that.
still healthy?
Keaton Mitchell, if he's still healthy. The Dolphins have Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane, 2 guys that are talented, but they are not like guys that you're paying top dollar. They're nobody's idea of like the greatest running back in the league. The 49ers are the exception. They have Christian McCaffrey, who's still in his prime, and they function at a really high level. The Buffalo Bills are one of the best running teams in the league on an EPA per play basis. Who's their
Which
running
is
back? James Cook.
hilarious because it felt like they got rid of Ken Dorsey because he refused to run the ball or whatever it was.
Yeah,
And to me, it's James Cook, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I don't know. Latavius Murray is their backup running back. Latavius Murray is their
Yeah.
backup running back. Just want to throw that out
You've
there
got
again.
the Lions with David Montgomery mostly carrying the ball. I mean, they've obviously got Gibbs
Jahmyr
as
Gibbs.
well, but he's not been like a huge part of that. The Rams with Kyron Williams. I mean, Kyron Williams.
Did he
Like,
even get drafted? Like, I don't remember ever hearing the name Kyron Williams until like week 1 again when he went off for the Rams. Like,
yeah,
I don't even know anything about him.
no. I mean, he came out of nowhere. I think he's a good running back, but like again, you can
Yeah.
just find these guys. The Eagles, they go grab DeAndre Swift off the scrap heap, and DeAndre Swift is about to be like a top 3 running back in the league this year. These are not teams with great running backs. These are teams with great offensive lines and great schemes. So, like, you
And
can't.
kind of a diverse set of running backs, even
It
like their
is.
main running back can kind of
Yeah.
do it all. Whereas Derrick Henry can, but that part where he's I think the biggest problem is that you're just at a point where it's kind of like too little too late to get him involved in every facet of the game in his career. And right now he just can't do what needs to be done. And that's okay to admit. It's okay to admit and appreciate. Man, sure did appreciate that Derrick Henry got 9K yards. I love that he gets all these touchdowns.
Yeah.
I hate that he's just not a fit for this team for much longer.
And I wouldn't like you said, I think if they want to bring him back, then I'm fine with that. On the or I guess in the case that he is the 1B to Tajay Spears 1A. Like it's Spears' backfield next year. And if they want to bring Henry back to be like a short yardage specialist, be able to take a few carries off of Spears here and there, maybe be able to salt games away as like a late game sledgehammer kind of deal. I'm all for that, and let him chase, the kind of the career marks and get the 10,000 yards in a Titans uniform, get to 100
Maybe it may take
touchdowns.
him at this point. It may take him 2 seasons to get to
It could.
10,000.
But let him get to 100 touchdowns. He would certainly get to 100 touchdowns in a Titans uniform. Like get those career milestones here would be great, because I just don't think that there's going to be a line around the corner for Derrick Henry services in free agency. You're talking about 30-year-old running back who's got to play a very specific way to be effective, and we know he's winding down. It's the same way I felt about Kevin Byard. It doesn't mean that I have any less respect for those guys, or that I haven't enjoyed their careers, and I won't think of them as some of my very favorite players that this franchise has ever seen pass through its doors. They are within the top probably 5 all time for me, both of them. But that doesn't mean that we can't also be realistic about what we're seeing with our eyes. And I know some of you just want to make excuses because he's your favorite player, and you're never going to believe that Derrick Henry's slowing down, even when he's 48 years old and sitting on the couch on Sunday. You're still going to believe he could come out there and rush for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. But at some point, it comes to an end for everybody. I think it's clear at this point that we're seeing the decline is happening as we speak. We are clearly seeing that, and it couldn't be more clear when you compare it to a younger running back making more plays than him in the same offense with the same offensive line with the same play calls. It couldn't be more clear, and the team sees it because Tajay Spears has played 2/3 of the snaps the past 2 weeks. And I think that we're going to continue to see that down the stretch because they know this is a Levis Spears team in 2024, and Henry may be here, but it's not going to be his team anymore.
Will Levis and Tajay Spears love each other.
They do. And I love that they love each other.
Yeah, I do too. Christian Fulton to IR. Any last words for Christian Fulton that you have?
Bye.
Good luck in your future endeavors.
Yeah,
that's about all we're going to cover for Christian Fulton for the rest of the year. It does bring up an interesting point, though, about the strength and conditioning staff and versus because Christian Fulton is a guy who's now been injured both ways, strength and conditioning and doing his own thing. So you've kind of said this before, but just a quick blurb is all we need. A quick blurb, because I want to get into some other stuff about are people overrating the strength and conditioning?
Yes, I think they do, because it's just an easy scapegoat for when injuries start to pile up. I just think it's more luck of the draw. I think Steve Watterson has even said a lot of it is just luck. I mean, sure, you want to train these guys as best you can, but some of this stuff is just, a guy gets folded up and, he gets folded up. I mean, there's not any specific lift or training that you can do to avoid a guy falling on your leg the wrong way. So I think it's overrated.
Lastly, let's see. Well, we still... Okay, we kind of already covered the Texans. I mean, I think we covered the Texans enough.
There's not a lot.
Right.
I would be interested. I kind of want Stroud to be able to play in this game just because I'm very interested to see those two on the field together at the same time, Levis and Stroud. But I don't think he probably will. And if he doesn't, I don't think the Texans are going to win this game. And they're not going to have Tank Dell. They're probably not going to have Nico Collins either, right? Nico's out for a while, I believe, too.
He's still aiming to try and get in there and play, but I think it's very skeptical. I read a report today.
Yeah, if neither of those guys play, I don't think they're winning this game.
Okay. Mike, we have some toddlers on X, and it's not just New Jersey guy, but there's people that agree with him. So it's not all about Jersey boy, but they're because there's you have a following because people think that what you say is normally correct, but they have people that agree with them in these replies. That first off, it was Mike Vrabel hates Will Levis. Now Mike Vrabel loves Will Levis, I guess, and now it's Will Levis hates Mike Vrabel because I guess he touched his nose or something. Here's the thing. I don't watch the locker room videos unless there's something really cool that happens and I see a lot of people share it. If it's not getting shared, I'm not actively going to the Titans YouTube page to look up a locker room video that I really just don't give a shit about. Because generally that stuff just doesn't matter. Yeah. Because in the media, in interviews, in discussions about Will Levis or in discussions about Mike Vrabel, they really seem to like each other, and they are the perfect match. They're like one of those like rare. I don't know if it's really rare, but they seem like a head coach and a quarterback that really just are a match made in heaven at this point. And I wouldn't have believed it based off pre stuff, but I believe it now. But how continually ridiculous is a cycle where people are dissecting locker room videos for micro expressions or nose scratches or eye rubs or this or that and trying to decipher what's being said in inaudible room. And first off, can I just plead if I don't know if Bain is still like in charge of production of these videos or anything like that. Can you just dub in Will Levis at this point? Can you just dub in the words Will Levis, just like a bad Godzilla movie, like back in the day? Just dub in Will Levis, even if he's clearly not saying it, just so we don't have to hear about it anymore. I just plead with someone in the Titan social media production department to help us out because I I get people that send me tweets and DMs and X's and DMs, and I see people screenshot it that I follow. I have them muted, but I see other people say, but they're, and so then I have to go down this wormhole of seeing who's replying, who's agreeing, and it's an epidemic of people that just are never going to be happy, even after a miraculous win. One of the best wins in franchise history. You know, we talked about the Detroit Lions win. There was a guy, Taylor Hurst on Twitter, who he went to the Miami game. His girlfriend or his wife, his significant other, forced him to leave because they thought the game was over of this Miami game. And there was like thousands of stories about the Detroit Lions game. So this is like one of the best wins. And the first thing is like, first thing out of your mouth is like, Will Levis better get the game ball. I better fucking see it. Or I'm going to make a video in my car, or I'm going to reply on Twitter, or I'm going to get on the YouTube page and be so mad in the comments and the tweets and blah, 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 blah. Because obviously that's the only way to show love to a quarterback is in, like, I'm just sick of it. Like, it's a cycle. Like, it's a cycle that people need to somehow break this habit. And like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to be so obsessed with this that it ruins your enjoyment of a win. Instead, you're focusing on the wrong stuff that doesn't fucking matter.
This is what I think this really comes down to. Is I think some people jump the gun on the Mike Vrabel thing. That some people got too frustrated and jumped ship on Mike Vrabel. And now they don't really want to walk that back, even though the team is clearly playing still for Mike Vrabel and just pulled off a like miraculous win against what should have been the number one team in the AFC had they held on and beaten the Titans. And now they're looking for other reasons to hate on and dump on Mike Vrabel. Like, I just think that this is you're actively looking for reasons to shit on this guy. If you have to go and micro analyze body language from a 3-second clip of them in the locker room after a game, or count how many times he says his name in post-game speeches that are edited and not full length, obviously, it's absolutely a waste of your time to be getting yourself wrapped up in all this. They clearly like each other. Will Levis's family has gone on the record to The Athletic, I think right when he was drafted or maybe shortly thereafter, and said, "We are so glad that Will ended up in Tennessee because Mike Vrabel is the perfect kind of guy to help rein Will in. Like, Will needs somebody who's going to coach him hard and hold him accountable and not tell him, he's God's greatest, gift to the earth." And guess what? That's what Mike Vrabel's doing, and it's working. And Will Levis respects him and is clearly, it's a functioning relationship, and it's going to be a growing relationship. And I'm sure, once Will Levis has been in the league for a few years and he's a little bit more mature, and him and Mike Vrabel have been around each other for a while, I'm sure there will be a little bit more of the like the love shown from Mike Vrabel to Will Levis. But right now, this kid needs to be kept in check. I think it's a little bit of like a fire and ice kind of thing where like Levis is just like this unbridled, like firebrand of a personality, especially on the field. And Vrabel's a little bit cooler, calmer, and needs to like bring him down a little bit to keep him in check. So he's not just, playing off of pure emotion, which is not a good thing to do as an NFL quarterback. So I just think it's such a massive reach based on nothing. I mean, there's no reporting, there's no nothing besides speculative analysis of body language in hallway clips to back this up. So let's drop it and let's enjoy a big win and a quarterback who seems to be coming into his own and like easily the most exciting quarterback prospect that we've seen, since 2015. So almost a decade playing for the Titans. So like enjoy that. Enjoy that. Don't let all this other nonsense feed you into this dark place of having to figure out who hates who and who is, what it's stupid. It's just a waste of time.
I think Stoney put it best. Levis is like a horny teenager, and Vrabel has to pass out condoms so he doesn't get somebody pregnant.
Exactly.
Yeah. I find this whole, like, this week, for whatever reason, heading into the game and after the game has been filled with some of the just dumb mistakes. Dumb takes. And at this point, I think it's almost a bit. I think I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say something. I think some of these people are wanting to get paid by Twitter Blue, and god dang it, I hope that $13 is really worth it for you to go on and make your ass of yourself. And maybe it is. Maybe $13 is what you need to make ends meet. That's the final thing to push you over to get that, a better refrigerator or something. I don't know. I don't know what you need the $13 for. If it's the last thing of a student loan payment or something. But at this point, I just have to think it's a bit. I think it's a bit, and that's why I got him muted. And you know what? I'm going to say this. I don't want anybody to send me any DMs or screenshots of what he says. And I think that will just be good. I think we'll just be good after that.
Yeah.
That will do it for us. Bluegrass Beverage is our sponsor. Go follow at Bluegrass Bev on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and get up to date with them and see how you can support them through now that the tornadoes have passed through. Go to paulkarski.com if you want to read some more hate about Derrick Henry. Mike wrote about it today. You can follow him on X at Mike Herndon NFL, over on Twitter, or over on Stacking Inbox. We got all kinds of articles coming out. We got a film Friday coming out on Tyjae Spears on Friday by Stoney, which will be excellent and fun. Follow me on X at FWordsPod. This has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.